I hereby call this meeting of Norwood City Council to order. Please rise for the prayer and pledge of allegiance. Our Father, who art in heaven, as a body we congregate in these council chambers. We pray for thy divine guidance, that we may do all things well, according to thy holy will. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Williams, please call the roll.
Mrs. Hoover.
Here.
Mrs. Lake.
Here.
Mr. Kelch.
Here.
Mr. DiNardo.
Here.
Mr. Thompson.
Here.
Mr. Braden.
Here.
We have 6 members present this evening. Moving on to amendment of agenda. Please bear with me, we have several items. The first item is that we're adding the minutes from 9/14/21, 11/9/21, and 11/23/21. We're also adding an ordinance regarding collective bargaining. That will be L6. Then we have the exhibits from the auditor for the appropriations, ordinances for L1 and L2. We have changed some language in L4. We also have language that was changed in the minutes of December 14th, where it says Norwood Business Districts, it should say Neighborhood Business Districts. And in the last page, Mrs. Lake noted that one person was on the Board of Zoning Appeals, not Mr. Bernard. And finally, we have 2 additional communications. P2 is from our auditor, Jim Stiff, regarding November financial reports.
Yes.
And P3 is from the Planning Commission regarding Factory 52 public hearing. And the last thing, Mrs. Lake has requested that we move item L3, 4, and 5 right after the minutes. Mrs. Lake.
I hope you don't ask me to repeat that, but I move that we amend the agenda as stated.
Thank you. Motion by Mrs. Lake. Mr. Braden.
Second.
Second by Mr. Braden. Any discussion?
Clarification.
Mr. Thompson.
Where were we putting the new ordinance?
Oh, I said L6.
L6,
I'm
okay.
sorry.
Thank you, sorry, I missed that.
That's okay. Motion by Mrs. Lake, second by Mr. Braden. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Hoover.
Yes.
Mrs. Lake.
Yes.
Mr. Kelch.
Yes.
Mr. DiNardo.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Braden.
Yes, ma'am.
All members present, voting aye. Motion passes. Item F, minutes of previous meetings. We have December 14th, 9/14/21, 11/9/21, and 11/3/21. Mrs. Lake.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the 4 sets of minutes be approved as if read.
Motion by Mrs. Lake. Mr. Thompson.
Second that?
Second by Mr. Thompson. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Hoover.
Yes.
Mrs. Lake.
Yes.
Mr. Kelch.
Yes.
Mr. DiNardo.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Braden.
Yes, ma'am.
All members present, voting aye. The motion passes. Moving on to item L3. Ordinance declaring that Burwood Avenue between Williams Avenue and Shanmore Avenue shall hereby receive the honorary secondary name of Firefighter Roy Ferguson Way. Mrs. Lake.
I move that we suspend the rules and have all 3 readings of the ordinance, the first in its entirety.
Motion by Mrs. Lake to suspend the rules and have all 3 readings in its entirety. Having the first reading in its entirety. Mr. Kelch.
Second.
Second by Mr. Kelch. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Hoover.
Yes.
Mrs. Lake.
Yes.
Mr. Kelch.
Yes.
Mr. DiNardo.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Braden.
Yes, ma'am.
All members present, voting aye. The motion passes.
Ordinance declaring that Burwood Avenue between Williams Avenue and Shanmore Avenue shall hereby receive the honorary secondary name of Firefighter Roy Ferguson Way. Whereas Roy Ferguson was appointed to the Norwood Fire Department on March 12, 1921, after having served in the Cincinnati Fire Department for 12 years before entering the Norwood Fire Department, and whereas Firefighter Roy Ferguson, then age 57, responded to a fire at 4033 Burwood Avenue on December 3, 1943. And whereas Firefighter Roy Ferguson, having gone home from the fire feeling poorly, died within an hour of his return home at 4746 Ridgeway Avenue, leaving behind his wife, May, and 2 children, PFC William Ferguson, stationed at Fort Benning, Georgia, and Mary Ferguson, a student nurse at Good Samaritan Hospital. And whereas Norwood City Council now wishes to honor Firefighter Roy Ferguson's brave sacrifice and that of his family, and to honor the service and sacrifice of all Norwood firefighters, past and present, now therefore be it ordained by the Council of the City of Norwood, State of Ohio, the Mayor and the City Council of the City of Norwood hereby declare that Burwood Avenue, between Williams Avenue and Shanmore Avenue, shall hereby receive the honorary secondary name of Firefighter Roy Ferguson Way by legislative action of the Mayor and City Council in honor of Firefighter Roy Ferguson and in recognition of his contributions to the City of Norwood. That the appropriate city officials are hereby authorized to do all things necessary and proper to implement the provisions of Section 1 herein, including the generation and installation of secondary street signage for Burwood Avenue at its intersections with Williams Avenue and Shanmore Avenue, in accordance with the Department of Transportation and Engineering's procedure related to secondary street designation and related signage. Council also requests that appropriate signs be placed and an appropriate ceremony conducted on December 3rd, 2022, at the intersection of Burwood and Williams Avenues. Council declares that December 3rd be recognized as Firefighter Roy Ferguson Day each year. Ordinance declaring that Burwood Avenue between Williams Avenue and Shanmore Avenue shall hereby receive the honorary secondary name of Firefighter Roy Ferguson Way. Ordinance declaring that Burwood Avenue between Williams Avenue and Shanmore Avenue shall hereby receive the honorary secondary name of Firefighter Roy Ferguson Way.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. Mrs. Lake.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the ordinance be passed.
Motion by Mrs. Lake. Mr. Braden.
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Braden. Any further discussion? Mrs. Lake.
I don't believe that there's any relatives of Mr. Ferguson, of Firefighter Ferguson here. I tried looking for them. I knew his daughter, Mary, the one that was a student nurse at the time. She was a friend of my mother-in-law's, and so I knew her for a while. Apparently, Mr. Ferguson went home after the fire, feeling very badly, and died of an apparent heart attack. So it was certainly in the line of duty death, unfortunately. And so their family is not, I could not find any family, but the mayor suggested that we frame this ordinance and perhaps put it in City Hall or at the fire department to honor him, since the family isn't here, and we have others, we will be presenting ordinances to other family members. So I just wanted to let you know that we tried and could not find any other family members. They lived on Ridgeway next door to my husband's grandmother, so that's how we knew them.
Thank you, Mrs. Lake. Anyone else? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Hoover.
Yes.
Mrs. Lake.
Yes.
Mr. Kelch.
Yes.
Mr. DiNardo.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Braden.
Yes, ma'am.
All members present voting aye, the ordinance passes. Moving on to item L4, ordinance declaring that Carthage Avenue between Lawn Avenue and Ross Avenue shall hereby receive the honorary secondary name of Fire Lieutenant Robert Plogman Way. Mrs. Lake.
Move that we suspend the rules and have all 3 readings of the ordinance, the first in its entirety.
Motion by Mrs. Lake. Mr. Thompson.
Second that.
Second by Mr. Thompson. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Hoover.
Yes.
Mrs. Lake.
Yes.
Mr. Kelch.
Yes.
Mr. DiNardo.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Braden.
Yes, ma'am.
All members present voting aye, the motion passes. Mrs. Williams, may we have all 3 readings?
Ordinance declaring that Carthage Avenue between Lawn Avenue and Ross Avenue shall hereby receive the honorary secondary name of Fire Lieutenant Robert Plogman Way. Whereas Firefighter Robert Plogman was appointed to the Norwood Fire Department on July 26, 1969, and whereas Firefighter Robert Plogman, then age 35, on June 22, 1980, was activated from off-duty to respond to a fire at 5146 Carthage Avenue, as another Norwood fire unit was fighting another fire on Hopkins Avenue. And whereas Firefighter Robert Plogman was operating on the aerial ladder when the ladder came in contact with high-voltage electrical power lines, and Firefighter Plogman was electrocuted. And whereas Firefighter Bobby Plogman, who was born and raised in Norwood, graduated from Purcell High School, served in the United States Navy from 1965 to 1969 in the Frogman Division, and lived at 2237 Cathedral Avenue with his wife Jackie and two daughters, Emily and Mary Ann. And whereas Firefighter Robert Plogman, who had taken and passed the fire lieutenant's promotional exam, was posthumously promoted to fire lieutenant. And whereas Norwood City Council now wishes to honor Fire Lieutenant Robert Plogman's brave sacrifice and that of his family, and to honor the service and sacrifice of all Norwood firefighters, past and present, now therefore be it ordained by the Council of the City of Norwood, State of Ohio. Section 1. The Mayor and the City Council of the City of Norwood hereby declare that Carthage Avenue, between Lawn Avenue and Ross Avenue, shall hereby receive the honorary secondary title of Fire Lieutenant Robert Plogman Way by legislative action of the Mayor and City Council in honor of Fire Lieutenant Robert Plogman in recognition of his contributions to the City of Norwood. Section 2. That the appropriate city officials are hereby authorized to do all things necessary and proper to implement the provisions of Section 1 herein, including the generation and installation of secondary street signage for Carthage Avenue at its intersections with Lawn Avenue and Ross Avenue, in accordance with the Department of Transportation and Engineering's procedures relating to secondary street designation and related signage. Section 3, Council also requests that appropriate signs be placed and an appropriate ceremony conducted on June 22, 2022, at the intersection of Carthage and Lawn Avenues. Section 4, Council declares that June 22nd be recognized as Fire Lieutenant Robert Plogman Day each year. Ordinance declaring that Carthage Avenue, between Lawn Avenue and Ross Avenue, shall hereby receive the honorary secondary name of Fire Lieutenant Robert Plogman Way. Ordinance declaring that Carthage Avenue, between Lawn Avenue and Ross Avenue, shall hereby receive the honorary secondary name of Fire Lieutenant Robert Plogman Way.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. Mrs. Lake.
I move that the ordinance be passed and that the family be given an opportunity to speak once the ordinance is passed.
Thank you, Mrs. Lake. Mr. Kelch?
Second.
Second by Mr. Kelch. Any discussion? Mrs. Lake.
Bobby was at my house the night before he got called in. My husband had just gotten his degree from the University of Cincinnati after going to night school forever. And he was teasing me because it was my first year on council when we were talking about Norwood Day. And somebody asked if I was going to Norwood Day, and he said, "Are you kidding me? She's a politician. Of course she'll be at Norwood Day." That's kind of the way Bobby was. He went home because he wasn't feeling well. And what we found out later when he got called in, Jackie was concerned. She had two young daughters. Marion was like 6 weeks old. She wasn't very old at all. And she kept saying, "Do you have to go in?" And he said, "Jackie, they need me." That was like his mantra, "They need me." He absolutely loved the fire department. And it was a shock to all of us the next day to find out what had happened. He was a wonderful human being, a wonderful friend to anybody who knew him. Jackie and I remained friends, and she's since remarried and has two other daughters. And I know they're very grateful about this, and I'm sorry that it took so long. I had no idea that this could be done, but I wanted to make sure that before I left the seat that we got this done for them. So thank you all for suspending the rules and passing this.
Thank you, Mrs. Lake. Anyone else? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
Mrs. Lake?
Yes.
Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mr. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes, ma'am.
All members present, voting aye, the motion passes.
girl, but she's 6 years old.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah, thank you, Donna, and thank you to the fire department. No, I just want to say that the city of Norwood and the fire department has always taken such good care of us and looked out for our whole family. And we just haven't had one guardian angel. We've had a whole city of them. And thank you guys. You guys are heroes. I love you all so much, and you have the most special place in my heart.
Yes, thank you so much. And I echo everything that Emily said. And I also am so appreciative that we have a family member that lives, like, lets my daddy Bob's legacy live on through him. He's such an awesome firefighter and a person all around. So thank you, Bobby Schlachter, as well.
Item L5, ordinance declaring that Maple Avenue between Station Avenue and Montgomery Road shall hereby receive the honorary secondary name of Firefighter James Condren Way. Mrs. Lake.
Move that we suspend the rules and have all 3 readings, the first in its entirety.
Motion by Mrs. Lake. Mrs. Hoover?
I second that.
Second by Mrs. Hoover. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
Mrs. Lake?
Yes.
Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mr. DiNardo?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
All members present voting aye, the motion passes. Mrs. Williams.
Ordinance declaring that Maple Avenue between Station Avenue and Montgomery Road shall hereby receive the honorary secondary name of Firefighter James Condren Way. Whereas Firefighter James Condren was appointed to the Norwood Fire Department on June 24, 1957, and whereas on December 26, 1977, Firefighter James Condren, having responded to treat a person who had overdosed on a drug of abuse, had started an intravenous IV line when the patient became agitated and withdrew his arm, causing the IV needle to become dislodged and to penetrate Firefighter Condren's right hand. And whereas the patient who was hepatitis B positive passed that disease on to Firefighter Condren, who spent the next 6 years in and out of the hospital being treated for complications from hepatitis B. And whereas on January 24, 1981, Firefighter Condren retired from the Norwood Fire Department on a service-related disability, mainly due to ongoing issues with the disease. And whereas on October 16, 1984, Firefighter James Condren, who lived at 2577 Irving Place, died from complications from hepatitis B at age 54, leaving behind his wife, Anna Mae, and 3 children, Kathy Maureen and Timothy. And whereas because of Firefighter James Condren's illness, significant changes were made to pre-hospital treatment, the use of personal protective equipment, PPE, and the recommendation that all healthcare workers get the hepatitis B vaccine. And whereas Norwood City Council now wishes to honor Firefighter James Condren's brave sacrifice and that of his family, and to honor the service and sacrifice of all Norwood firefighters past and present, now therefore be it ordained by the Council of the City of Norwood, State of Ohio, the Mayor and the City Council of the City of Norwood hereby declare that Maple Avenue between Station Avenue and Montgomery Road shall hereby receive the honorary secondary name of Firefighter James Condren Way by legislative action of the Mayor and City Council in honor of Firefighter James Condren and in recognition of his contributions to the City of Norwood. Section 2, that the appropriate city officials are hereby authorized to do all things necessary and proper to implement the provisions of Section 1 herein, including the generation and installation of secondary street signage for Maple Avenue between Station Avenue and Montgomery Road, in accordance with the Department of Transportation and Engineering's procedures relating to secondary street designation and related signage. Section 3, Council also requests that appropriate signs be placed and an appropriate ceremony conducted on October 16, 2022, at the intersection of Maple Avenue and Montgomery Road. Section 4, Council declares that October 16th be recognized as Firefighter James Condren Day each year. Ordinance declaring that Maple Avenue between Station Avenue and Montgomery Road shall hereby receive the honorary secondary name of Firefighter James Condren Way. Ordinance declaring that Maple Avenue between Station Avenue and Montgomery Road shall hereby receive the honorary secondary name of Firefighter James Condren Way.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. Mrs. Lake.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the ordinance be passed and that the family be permitted to speak.
Motion by Mrs. Lake. Mr. Braden.
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Braden. Any further discussion? Mrs. Lake.
I had a nice discussion with Tim. I'm not sure which one of you are Tim. Okay, thank you. Tim's firefighter Condren's son. As a nurse, I know how things have changed, thankfully for the better. I recall when I was first out of nursing school many, many years ago, we never wore gloves, we never had protective equipment, things were so much different then. And it wasn't until horrible things like what happened to firefighter Condren and nurses and doctors around the country that we finally got wise and started taking precautions that now firefighters can't even imagine not having. And not having a place where firefighter Condren died, like the others were in fires. I had a discussion with the chief, and the chief suggested that right next to the fire department might be the best place for it. So that's why Maple Avenue was chosen, so that the firefighters can see that. And it'll be a reminder every day when the firefighters come in. And so, again, I apologize that it took us so long. We had no idea that this could be done. Mr. Geraci started it at the last meeting. And I vowed that I was going to get this done before I left the seat tonight. So thank you, Mr. Gary, for getting all of these ordinances done in such a timely manner. I appreciate it. And I thank the Fire Assistant Chief, Mr. Brody Cianciola, who did a lot of helping with a lot of the background work. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mrs. Lake. Anyone else? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
Mrs. Lake?
Yes.
Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mr. DiNardo?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes, ma'am.
All members present voting aye, the ordinance passes.
Kathy and Maureen, they're all here, all their children.
Thank you so much.
You want to have,
We really
you can
appreciate it.
say words if you would.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for doing this. This is incredibly thoughtful, and, you know, our entire family is grateful for this recognition. And I think the placement, too, is incredibly appropriate. We remember visiting Dad on his work days and going up and down that street very often. So it's nice that it will be a reminder to present firefighters and those in the future, so they know how important their jobs are and how much we appreciate them. So thank you. Thank you.
You really don't have to stay anymore. We wouldn't put you through this. We won't be offended if you leave.
If I might add, just real quickly, I know that you already covered. Thank you. There are definitely heroes amongst us, and there are heroes amongst us that have families, young children, and they risk their lives for us on a regular basis. Our police officers and our firefighters do it for our community. They do it for many, many reasons. It's the families sometimes that get the hardship of it, and we're so proud of our firefighters and police officers and what they do on a regular basis. Much like you were proud of your dad and your brother and your father and your friend, and we're glad to have heroes that are willing to give the ultimate sacrifice to help us, to help us sleep safely and securely every night. And we do, and we thank you for your not just your sacrifice, but what you gave to our city. Thank you.
Moving on, item G is public hearings. We don't have any this evening. We had no requests to address council, no reports of standing committees of council. We have no third or second reading, so we'll move right into introductory reading of ordinances and resolutions. L1, ordinance to change appropriations for the year 2021 and declaring an emergency. Mrs. Lake.
Move we suspend the rules and have all three readings?
Yeah, try not to sneak.
Motion by Mrs. Lake to suspend the rules and have all three readings. Mr. DiNardo.
Second, please.
Second by Mr. DiNardo. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
Mrs. Lake?
Yes.
Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mr. DiNardo?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes, ma'am.
All members present, the motion passes. May we have all three readings, Mrs. Williams?
Ordinance to change appropriations for the year 2021 and declaring an emergency. Ordinance to change appropriations for the year 2021 and declaring an emergency. Ordinance to change appropriations for the year 2021 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. Mr. DiNardo.
Motion to pass this ordinance.
Motion by Mr. DiNardo to pass the ordinance. Mr. Kelch.
Second.
Second by Mr. Kelch. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
Mrs. Lake?
Yes.
Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mr. DiNardo?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes, ma'am.
All members present, voting aye, the ordinance passes. Moving on to item L2, ordinance making permanent appropriations for the expenditures of the city of Norwood, Ohio, declaring the calendar year ending December 31st, 2022, and declaring an emergency. Mrs. Lake.
Move that we suspend the rules and have all three readings?
Motion by Mrs. Lake to suspend the rules and have all three readings. Mr. DiNardo.
Second, please.
Second by Mr. DiNardo. Any discussion? Mrs. Lake.
And speaking to the auditor, my understanding is that this is based upon the financial recovery plan, that this just reflects what you all have approved in the financial recovery plan, and requested that we get this done so they can start out fresh on the first of the year.
Thank you, Mrs. Lake. Mr. DiNardo.
Yeah. Yes, and.
Yes and no.
Yes, and I would say that this, for everyone here, it goes over the next 3 years, and that's particularly important because I think what we've done is we've tried to reduce our expenditures to get things right. Obviously, that's priority number one. There's a close second. We're trying to get stability and keep things very known and predictive. Things like this, although it's an increase and although it's maybe a little bit more than I think 2 years ago we would have expected, the reality is that there's a ton of uncertainty going on what's going to happen over the next 2, 3, 4 years. So locking things down, even if it feels a little bit burdensome, could be very much worse. So it's in our best interest to provide the next council, the next 2 years, with that stability. So hope that we all just quickly put this to bed. This is a very good thing to create that stability for us.
Thank you, Mr. DiNardo. Anyone else? Mrs. Lake.
I just want to recognize Mr. DiNardo with your work over the years, and on getting this done. And Mr. Miracle, I don't miss the financial recovery plan meetings, but you and the mayor and everybody for getting us to this point. So thank you for your good work.
Thanks. There's a lot of other people.
Thank you, Mrs. Lake. Anyone else? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
Mrs. Lake?
Yes.
Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mr. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes, ma'am.
All members present, voting aye. Motion passes. Now we have all three readings.
Ordinance making permanent appropriations for the expenditures of the City of Norwood, Ohio for the calendar year ending December 31st, 2022, and declaring an emergency. Ordinance making permanent appropriations for the expenditures of the City of Norwood, Ohio for the calendar year ending December 31st, 2022, and declaring an emergency. Ordinance making permanent appropriations for the expenditures of the City of Norwood, Ohio for the calendar year ending December 31st, 2022, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. Mr. Thompson.
Move we pass the ordinance.
Motion by Mr. Thompson to pass the ordinance. May I have a second? Mrs. Hoover.
Second that?
Second by Mrs. Hoover. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
Mrs. Lake?
Yes.
Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mr. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes, ma'am.
All members present, voting aye. The ordinance passes. Moving on to item L6. Ordinance authorizing the mayor and safety service director to enter into a collective bargaining agreement with local union 445 of the International Association of Firefighters, consistent with the terms of the attached Exhibit A for the period from January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2024, and declaring an emergency. Mr. Braden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that council go into executive session for the sole purposes of reviewing negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees, Local 445, of the ASF, concerning their compensation and other terms and conditions of their employment under ORC 121.22,
G4.
D4.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. Mrs. Lake,
A second?
second by Mrs. Lake. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
Mrs. Lake?
Yes.
Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mr. Donato?
Yeah.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes, ma'am.
All members present, voting aye. Motion passes. We are in executive session.
be out there.
Item L6 is the ordinance authorizing the mayor and safety service director enter into collective bargaining agreement with local Union 445 of the International Association of Firefighters, consistent with the terms of the attached Exhibit A for the period from January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2024, and declaring an emergency. Mr. Kelch.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules, have all three readings.
Motion by Mr. Kelch. Mr. DiNardo.
Second, please.
Second by Mr. DiNardo. Any discussion? Please go to roll.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
Mrs. Lake?
Yes.
Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mr. DiNardo?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes, ma'am.
All members present, voting aye, the motion passes. May we have all three readings? Mrs. Williams.
Ordinance authorizing the mayor and safety service director to enter into a collective bargaining agreement with local union 445 of the International Association of Firefighters, consistent with the terms of the attached Exhibit A for the period from January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2024, and declaring an emergency. Ordinance authorizing the mayor and safety service director to enter into a collective bargaining agreement with local union 445 of the International Association of Firefighters, consistent with the terms of the attached Exhibit A for the period from January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2024, and declaring an emergency. Ordinance authorizing the mayor and safety service director to enter into a collective bargaining agreement with local union 445 of the International Association of Firefighters, consistent with the terms of the attached Exhibit A for the period from January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2024, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. Mr. Kelch.
I'd like to make a motion to pass the ordinance.
May I have a second? Mr. DiNardo.
Second, please.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
Mrs. Lake?
Yes.
Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mr. DiNardo?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes, ma'am.
All members present, voting aye, the ordinance passes. Moving on to item M, administrative reports. Mayor Schneider.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of council. I'll keep it brief. I do want to point out that it's the 28th, and there's a big event coming up on January 1st, which is the inauguration of all the new council members and everybody getting sworn in. Hopefully, everybody realizes that it's going to be held at the middle school auditorium, and the ceremony is at 12 o'clock. You want to be promptly there 15 minutes early, 11:45. It's always a pretty interesting ceremony and great to see, new people getting sworn in. So hopefully, everybody out there will be, some of you will be there. I'll be there. And then I also wanted to point out that we held new council orientation a month or so back. And it was really nice to have a chance to meet the new council members who are coming on council-elect at that point, meet them and have a discussion about how sort of the city runs, help them understand how city email works, where their mailbox is, all the different things that hopefully will help them be successful right from the get-go. Sometimes you feel like you're treading water, and I think somebody had said it's like taking, a drink from a fire hose. But that's a good one to use tonight, too, with all the firefighter stuff going on. But it is sometimes that way, and the people who've been on council for a while know that those first few meetings and how they can feel, and then just those first few phone calls from community members. So we have new council orientation. I think it went well. I think the inauguration will go well. Hopefully, we'll get a lot of community support for that. From Public Works perspective, leaves are over. I think bulk leaf collection went very well, very smoothly this year. I was impressed because sometimes it seems like some of our streets are an absolute mess with leaves, but they were right on top of it. I really have to say bravo to those guys because they worked hard at getting it done. Then snow and ice control, the equipment's being set up for snow and ice control. So the first question is, is our Public Works Department ready for snow and ice control? And then are our residents ready for snow and ice control? Have you already bought a bag of salt? Or are you going to wait until it snows and then say, oh, I'll run over and get a bag of salt and there's no salt left? So the old Boy Scout adage of be prepared. All of you should be prepared also. The community members should be prepared. You've already got a snow shovel, right? We know, we live in Ohio, we live in Cincinnati, we're going to get some snow. We know we're going to get ice, so buy a bag now and be prepared. Big part of that. The next part is being prepared for January, and, January is fitness month. I call it fitness month. I don't know that many other people call it fitness month, but Crunch Fitness has been sending me stuff saying, get back to the gym. Our rec center has been open all this December, right? The whole month. Beautiful new rec center. Okay, not new, but revitalized rec center. It's absolutely looks great. Our recreation director, Mike Gabbard, is there and welcoming people on a regular basis. Memberships are being sold. Hopefully, everybody in the community has had a chance to stop by. I've stopped by a few times. I played a little bit of racquetball. They had the volleyball stuff set up. The fitness center is looking great. I was in there yesterday. Tons of equipment, probably more equipment than we really need, but we got tons of great equipment in the fitness center. More equipment than I need, that's for sure. I don't need everything there. But the recreation center is open. Please do stop by. It's right across from the high school, right across from on Sherman Avenue. You can't miss it. If you can't find the recreation center, you got problems because it's on Sherman, right across from the high school. But stop in. The swim pool has been filled up, the indoor swim pool. So there'll be senior aerobics going on in there. There'll be open swims. There'll be lap swimming, all sorts of good stuff. I think they just repaired the steam valve, which goes to the heat exchanger, so that the swim pool is heated by a big heat exchanger. The water runs through it, and that steam valve has been bad for a while. So hopefully that swim pool will be therapeutically warm, nice and warm. We'll see. Hopefully it works right. So we're going to go with that. The other part is that I'm working on the State of the City address, which is in formation right now. I hope to bring it to council. The second meeting in January would be our State of the City address. It'll be going to the chamber. Of course, the chamber is one who always drives. They contact me right away and say, like, hey, when are you going to get this thing going? So we've already got a date for the State of the City address, and we'll be bringing that to council at that point, too. We're working on streets. There's a lot going on. I mean, you've had some discussions with the Safety Service Director and a Human Resources person. We kick off on Paycor January 1st. That is something that Keith Hamrick has been working a lot with the Auditor's Office on. I'm working a lot with Paycor and basically all the departments. Hopefully, each of you actually got an email to get set up in Paycor also. All of you should have gotten an email. If you haven't, Keith should be getting those emails out to you because you should be set up on Paycor also. It's not just, when you look at Paycor and what we're doing, it's not just a tool to put your hours in, which I don't think you'll have to put any hours in onto the Paycor system. It's a scheduled payout. But it is a communication tool also. So you look at it on your phone and it's an app and it'll send you messages. And when we talked about that previously, it's a good communication tool to be used for all of our employees because each one of them have to have a Paycor sign in, a log in, and they should be looking at it. So that's about it. Don't forget about the inauguration. Talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors. Let's get more people there. I think normally we have maybe 100 people there, and it's a big auditorium, so it doesn't seem like there's a lot. But we should have a lot there. It's great to see that part. That's part of our government working. So that's all I have. If there's any questions or concerns.
Questions or comments for the mayor? Mr. Kelch?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just about the Paycor thing, might be a silly question, but I don't know if everybody else is, but I'm still getting paper checks. Is that something I can get on there and figure that out, like direct deposit or something, or is that completely different? Or?
You're still getting a pay stub, a check stub
Yeah.
Keith is sitting back here as our HR guy. Can you step up to the mic, please, if you would, Keith?
Yes. Hello, I'm Keith Hamrick, HR Director, since I haven't met either one of you. Hello.
Hello.
But yes, you can go in and change your direct deposit. You can view your pay stubs, your W-2s, anything really that we would provide you from the Auditor's Department. You can really look on there. I like this system just because it's really transparent. You can change your address on there, phone numbers, any of your personal information, your emergency contacts, all on your own rather than having to go through someone and hoping that we type it in correctly. So yes, all that stuff you can view and edit yourself now.
Paperless? So you can check a box and you're not getting a pay stub sent to you?
Yeah, well, you don't actually get a pay stub anymore. Everything will just be online. So we're going away from all this paper to save a little money on that as well. But you can just go log on and download it yourself or print it out at home. Yeah, as long as there is a direct deposit in there, I would just double check on that. And if you have not received emails or anything to set it up, contact me. Talk to me after this. We can set something up, and I can forcibly send something to your email if you haven't got it automatically.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Mr. Kelch. Anyone else? Thank you, Mayor Schneider. Moving on to unfinished business. Do we have any unfinished business this evening? Mrs. Lake?
Now, I'm not sure if there should be unfinished or a new business, but each year, the Retirees Benefit Program is supposed to report to council what we have done. And all of the applications, or all of the registrations are in. I turned those in to Mr. Stith earlier this week. They asked me to wait until after Christmas. So everyone, there's no one new who's in the Retirees Benefit Program. It's the same people, and I'm pretty sure that there should be nobody else in it. Unfortunately, there were 8 people who passed away this year, who obviously will not be in the program, so the cost will be a little less. It's $3,500 goes to each person, and it's just awaiting Mr. Stith. The checks are supposed to be out by the end of March by the ordinance that was passed by previous councils. In the past, Mr. Stith has managed to get those out in January, but with closing out the year and new people in the office, it may be February before he gets those out, but it'll be very early in the year. So I just wanted to report that to you, so there'll be a little bit of a savings there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Lake. Any other unfinished business? Mr. Braden?
A question to Ms. Lake through the chair, please.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
So, yeah, I'm sorry to hear that the 8 people, I am sorry to hear that. Do you have a count on that? I don't know if you mentioned that.
How many are in?
Yes.
I knew you were going to ask that.
No.
I don't. I want to say that's maybe, it was like 94 maybe, and I think there's 8, so it's in the 80s. I'll get you the exact number.
Yeah, it's just curious. It was just
Yeah.
curiosity. Thank you. Appreciate that.
I will get that to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Braden. Anyone else? No more unfinished business, and we'll move on to new business. Any new business? Mr. Thompson?
I don't know if this is new business, so it's not really any business, but I just want to take a moment to thank Ms. Donna Lake and Susan Hoover for jumping in and being part of our council. Ms. Lake for the last 3 or so months, and Ms. Hoover for the last couple times, but we couldn't do it without you, and we really appreciate you coming on board and helping us out.
Yes, thank you. Mrs. Lake?
Thank you, Mr. President. As I said when I was first approached about this, I can't tell you exactly what I said on the phone, but it was no, something like that. But after thinking about it, it has been a privilege. I have been with the city for a long time, and I would do most anything for this town. And so I want to thank you for accepting me, and as if I were a regular member of council. I want to tell you that you accomplished an awful lot in the last couple of years. Sometimes previous councils, it's interesting sitting up in the chair when you get to watch everybody and you see all the reactions and stuff. And so I got to work with Mr. Braden and Mr. Thompson for a while, and Mr. Kelch as well. I told the mayor that my only regret about not being president of the council was not being able to work with you all and with this administration. So it has been a privilege, and I want to thank you all for the work that you've done over the last couple of years. And I am happily will return to being a private citizen again. I'm involved in a lot of things, so I'm kind of like a bad penny. I show up every now and then. So. But thank you for all the work that you've done.
Thank you, Mrs. Lake. Anyone else? Any other new business? Mrs. Hoover?
So next month, January 17th, is MLK Day. It's a day to honor the work of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the civil rights leader who fought for racial justice. It is also a National Day of Service and our call to action. I will be collecting information in the next few weeks information on volunteer opportunities throughout our community, and we'll have it posted on the Norwood City webpage. And I want to encourage all Norwoodians to volunteer. You can take a walk with your family and pick up garbage. I can give you some streets if you'd like. You can stop in and visit with an elderly neighbor, donate to a food bank. There's no effort that's too small. So if you know of a group, an organization that would like volunteers, or if you have a group of people that would like to do a more organized service project, please reach out to me. My email, just set up today, is shoover@norwoodohio.gov. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hoover. Anyone else? I would like to mention that we're going to have a public hearing. It'll be the first meeting in February. We'll hear from communication on that in a little bit, but we'll get that set up, and that's for the, regarding the playing card partners. So Mrs. Mize will take care of that and get that set up for us. Any other new business? Then we'll move on to communications. We have 3 items this evening for communications. The first is from the Ohio Division of Liquor Control regarding Speedway LLC. Mrs. Williams.
This is another one of the notices from the Ohio Division of Liquor Control regarding, it's a notice to legislative authority. This one is about Speedway LLC on 4425 Montgomery Road. On this form, what we need to do is let the state know whether we want to request a hearing. If we do not, then we can just let them know that we do not need a hearing. Just as usual, whenever these come in, the Secretary of Council reaches out to all department chairs to see if anybody has any issue with that or has any concerns. And, since she didn't tell us anything, no one reported to her that they had a concern.
Mr. Donato.
Make a motion that we receive, file a letter, and ask this council express their wishes not to have a hearing.
Motion by Mr. Donato. May I have a second? Mr. Braden.
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Braden. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
Mrs. Lake?
Yes.
Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mr. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes, ma'am.
All members present voting aye. The motion passes. Moving on to item P2. Letter from Mr. Stith, our city auditor. Mrs. Williams.
December 27th, 2021, Norwood City Council. Dear council members, this letter is to let you know that the November monthly financial reports were emailed to each council member on December 27th. If you have not received said email, please let me know so that I can verify your email address and get a copy of the reports to you as well. Sincerely, Kim Dallas, Account Clerk, Auditor's Office.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. Mr. Braden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I make a motion that we receive and file the letter.
Motion by Mr. Braden, receive and file. Mr. Kelch.
Second.
Second by Mr. Kelch. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
Mrs. Lake?
Yes.
Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mr. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes, ma'am.
All members present voting aye. Motion passes. Moving on to our third communication. This is from the Law Department regarding the Planning Commission, or from the Planning Commission regarding Factory 52 public hearing.
Memorandum to City Council from the Planning Commission dated December 2nd of 2021 regarding playing card partners, Jewel Box 2755 Park Avenue, pickleball facility, and 2730 Maverick Drive. On December 1st, 2021, the Norwood Planning Commission held a public hearing and passed the following resolutions. That the existing planned unit development plan for the Factory 52 plan be modified to allow for a 1,100 square foot, single-story retailer restaurant, Jewel Box, to be located on the central common open space with a municipal address of 2755 Park Avenue, and that the proposed modification be forwarded to City Council for their review and approval. And 2, that the existing planned unit development plan for this Factory 52 plan be changed to allow for the inclusion of a new single-story building that will be used as a combination pickleball, restaurant, and bar, located on the 1.72 acre parcel at the northwest corner of the PUD development, with the municipal address of 2730 Maverick Drive, and that the proposed change be forwarded to City Council for their review and approval. If council schedules a meeting or a public hearing, it should be set no later than 30 days from the receipt of this memorandum.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. Mrs. Slate.
I move that the letter be received and filed and that the public hearing be set for the first meeting in February.
Yes. Thank you, Mrs. Slate. Mr. Thompson.
Second?
Second by Mr. Thompson. Any discussion? Mr. Denard.
Yeah, just curious, I don't know what a jewel box is. Anybody know?
What is a jewel box? Is that describing the?
Doesn't really matter. It was just, I think residents might be curious when they hear like, what the heck's going on
I think
there?
Noah has,
Right, we might
he has the
know.
answer.
It is a smaller retail establishment that's separate from another building. So it's a standalone structure, relatively small in size. I believe this one's about 1,200 square feet.
In the center of a park or a common open park space or something like that.
Yeah,
Could be
it was
cool.
originally planned to be in there, and then they left it off because they weren't sure if they were going to find somebody who wanted that space, and I think they did, and now they're saying, we need to get that in there.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Denard. Anyone else? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
Mrs. Lake?
Yes.
Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mr. DiNardo?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes, ma'am.
All members present voting aye, the motion passes. Moving on to item Q, excuse absent members. Mr. DiNardo.
Move to excuse any absent members?
Motion by Mr. DiNardo. May I have a second? Mr. Kelch.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
Mrs. Lake?
Yes.
Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mr. DiNardo?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
All members present voting aye, the motion passes. May I have a motion for adjournment? Mr. Thompson.
We adjourn.
Mr. Kelch.
Second.
Second by Mr. Kelch. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
Mrs. Lake?
Yes.
Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mr. DiNardo?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes, ma'am.
All members present voting aye, we are adjourned.
I'm adjourned.